I'd like to call the Plan Commission meeting to order on Tuesday, June 27th, 2023 at 5:32 PM. Janelle, could you please take roll call?
Bertle,
Here.
Gretzmacher,
Here.
Kane,
Here.
Schmitz,
Here.
Bell,
Here.
and Shameful.
Here. Before we approve the agenda, I would like to switch two things around. 7C and 7D. I would like us to review the telecommunications as C and the land division as D. That's all right with everyone. Is there a motion to approve as amended?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Gretzmacher, second by Bell. All those in favor respond with an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the May 23rd, 2023 Plan Commission meeting. I did have, think of, on page 5, line 44, and this was talking about the slingshots. The display area will not be allowed to extend more than 20% from the building. I believe that should be 20 feet, is what the zoning code says. That's the only thing I have. Anybody else?
I have a correction, page 6, line 26, it should say per week, not per month.
Page 6 of the minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. And what line 26?
Line 26.
Okay. Well, it's 1 week.
1 week, not once a week, not once a month,
Okay, so take per month out.
yes,
Okay. And change it to once a week.
once a week.
Okay, is there a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Motion by Kane, second by Gretzmacher. All those in favor respond with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We received a correspondence from Mr. Pagel pertaining to slingshots. Is there anybody in our audience tonight that would like to address the Plan Commission? Okay, we will go to item 6A.
Denise, we did receive one piece of correspondence. After the packets were distributed.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Okay. We received an email from Jason Shepke, who owns a residence in Mariners Point. And that is adjacent to the property that Mr. Bader and his associates own. He said he thinks that the drawings look great, but suggests that the Plan Commission consider imposing parking restrictions. He also suggests that cedar or hardy board siding as well as architectural shingles be required.
Okay. Thank you.
Janelle, I think there was, that he also had mentioned in there that he wanted to see stone.
Oh,
Is that
yeah.
correct?
Yeah, he would like to see stone on the lower level of each of the proposed buildings, like halfway up.
And when he talks about parking restrictions, he's saying he feels there's not enough parking on the site, that more stalls should be provided on the site.
Does Mariners Point have stone on their buildings?
Some of them do.
Some. Interesting. Okay. 6A, public hearing, discussion. Oh my gosh, sorry. Forgot to turn it on. Discussion and possible action, conditional use permit outdoor entertainment facility for 1211 Wine Bar at 10339 Highway 57. So at 5:36, I will open the public hearing. Julie, do you want to walk us through this?
Sure, 1211 properties have applied for a conditional use permit to operate an outdoor entertainment facility at 1211 located at 10339 State Highway 57 in a general business B1 zoning district. The applicant proposes to provide music on an existing outdoor patio located outside the wine bar area. And I expect that you all read the packet or the information that was in the meeting packet. So I won't go through it in full detail, but as the public hearing stated, you're aware of what they have proposed. They were here last month just to get a general feel to make sure we were okay conceptually with what they were proposing and to look for any red flags or concerns that we have. We do require the perimeter to be delineated by means of a fence, gate, landscaping. We do say that no entertainment, sales, or service can occur outside the delineated area. All outdoor activities, are restricted to 75 dBA and have to end by 10. And we look at parking. They do propose to rope off the patio area as we discussed last time. They do understand that seating is limited to the roped off area. They are aware of the sound restrictions and have agreed that they would comply with them initially. We want to hear what happens today to see if those need to be conditions on a permit. And their parking, we know that we struggle with parking out there, but it does meet code. It is what the code wants. For this particular use, the amount of land that it covers is pretty minimal. It doesn't cover a great big area. It's in back of the wine bar. It's just for a couple hours at night, as we stated in the packet. And then we did provide a plan of where they propose that music to occur. It's on that patio at the back of the facility. So that's all I have for you right now. I think maybe as we go along and hear from people, we might have more questions or possible conditions.
Does anybody joining us tonight want to speak for or against this permit?
As she said, it really doesn't take up it's really not a different amount of people than what we have when the wine bar is open. It's part of the wine bar. So it would not be any more seating or anything like that. So it wouldn't require any more parking. In addition, it's like she said, it'll be earlier hours. Usually we're done by their music's done by 7 if we have.
7:30 is the latest,
And
usually
it's-
it's only 2 hours from 5 to 7.
All acoustic music, no amplifiers or hard rock or anything like that, so. They're trying to provide like a winery type of feel,
Or like background
casual.
music, really.
Thank you, Carl.
Carl, can you just state your name and this phrase?
Carl Bradley, I own Time Restaurant.
And I'm Liz Weesoff, the general manager, and I do all the music booking for all of them. And I live on the property.
So in the packet on page 21, where the patio is highlighted, this is an old plan because it shows overflow, cut prairie grass, 38 spots, addition for parking, which was not approved by this commission a while back. I don't think this should be what we put in the file, seeing that that was denied. I think I'd want to see a new plan without that. I totally agree that the patio is an extension of the wine bar. It's not really creating an opportunity for more people to come and partake. But I don't know what to do with the parking because in the last couple of weeks, there were 3 events there. And especially a wedding, I think a week and a half ago on a Saturday, I think it was the Shumway wedding. And tons of cars were parking on the highway and we cannot have that. And I don't know what to do about it. And I don't think it's right necessarily that we hold this up because of events of that nature. But it is an issue, and I'm at a loss.
Denise, can I say a few things before the board goes back and forth?
Sure.
Um.
Just have a couple Act 67 things. Attorney Bjorn Johnson, counsel for the applicants. I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of the Act 67 changes a few years ago to conditional use permits. Those are before you, the provisions of Wisconsin statutes 62.23 sub 7 sub D. And just remember that if you are going to impose any conditions here tonight on this project, I'm going to be looking for a few things to make sure it complies with state law. Number one, are they reasonable? Number two, are they practicable? Number three, are they measurable? And number four, are they based on substantial evidence as defined therein? Under 2A at the bottom there on the left. So just remember, if the conditions meet those criteria, and if my clients agree to meet your conditions, you cannot deny the permit at that point. So that's the change that Act 67 made to conditional use permits. I know it.
Yes, we are very much aware of
Just-
how the state legislature has tied this commission's hands.
That's just what I'm making sure everyone's aware of here tonight. So you can't just deny the project because you don't like it, or because you think you heard through the grapevine certain things. So if you're gonna attach a condition, it's gotta be based on substantial evidence as defined therein. So just making sure everyone's aware of that when you start to discuss, okay, what conditions are we gonna impose on this project? So.
We may not impose any. So where do I go with my? What do we do? Is this not the time, the place to deal with this? I just feel that. That we can't continue.
Yeah, you're right. Now, this application, of course, is not, I don't think the place, because they clearly, this use does not require a lot of parking. They have more than enough for what they need out there for this particular use. It does continue to be a problem. They have done everything we've asked. We've asked for X amount of stalls. We've asked for it to be paved. I mean, they even went back and paved those little extra 5 we demanded in the development agreement. But they're still just, I mean, it's a very successful business. People want to be there. And it does generate a great parking demand. I think we need to have separate discussions with them regarding the parking situation. You know, the code, as you know, does not allow off-site parking. The Historical Society has allowed it. Maybe we need to revisit that or the code, but have those discussions with them. I will sit down with Carl and Tonda and their team and have those discussions. What can we do for these times when they have that overflow? Like I said, they meet the code. I think everyone's concern is they're parking on the highway. It's causing a danger. You know, I hate to, on one hand, I'm like, well, does the code not require sufficient parking? But as we all know, sometimes the code really requires too much parking. And in some cases, we have too much asphalt. So this is just one of those uses where it has multiple uses and it's very popular. So I will, outside of this, I will meet with Carl and Tonda. I can't next week, but the week after, and we'll just have some discussions and see where this can go. And bring this back after we have a solution or some ideas, if the commission is okay with that. But for now, like I said, the parking with this particular use, we can't hold it up. And I think we all agree. I mean, it's totally within the guidelines of the code on this one.
There's something I'd like to say, just to point you in a direction for this, the Christmas festival is not very far away from that.
Yeah.
They have another way of dealing with that doesn't involve adding parking, and that's finding a way to, on these large events, utilize some existing parking structures, because I don't want to see more asphalt in this village, and I think you're right, there's a lot of places we have more asphalt than we need, but we have a great demand for parking there. And I think that we should look at other solutions other than simply adding more parking that accomplishes the same thing. Because ultimately, it's not a parking problem, it's a transportation problem. We're mandating people get in cars to drive out there. Let's find an alternative. It's worth it to see if we can find an alternative.
Or are the events that are being held there too large?
That's the other alternative on there. You know, there's,
However,
Denise, can I
we
say
have
something
given
on that?
them, or we have given them permits and development agreements for those already.
Yeah.
Just a comment on that note, I know originally in our development agreement, we agreed to limit the hoop building events to 150. We've actually, in our contracts with people, put that down to 130 now. So any events going forward won't be more than 130. Mainly because it makes it tight in there for servers and everything anyway, so if that helps at all, that's.
It's a step in the right direction and and if that's new moving forward, that's good to know. So what, the events that you have had there currently, and a lot of people were parking out in the road, was not under that same criteria.
Exactly.
Okay, and so then we can, well, you'll be able to tell, you
Yeah,
know, as you hold events, is that 130 helping as, you and your team talk with Julie? I mean, we're happy that people want to go there.
thank you.
So it's just, the highway's a problem. So. Okay. Anybody else have questions or comments, concerns? Everybody is okay with what's being presented and
Can I suggest some conditions then?
sure,
Okay, so I think conditions should reiterate code as well as take into consideration some of the things that we heard tonight. So we do have to put in on the condition that the perimeter of the outdoor entertainment area be delineated, as is stated in the A of your staff report. B, we would enforce C. Now on C, they voluntarily said they're done by 7:30. So do we want to put that in there? Perhaps 8
Yes.
o'clock maybe allows time to clean up and. be done.
but yes, I think 8 o'clock is fair.
Liz, is that something that you guys can live with?
No.
Is 8 o'clock?
Couldn't stop.
No, but it's just, this is just.
Is there any way that we could do 9? Not that that would ever happen. Our events calendar is already planned for the whole entire summer. We don't have anything later than 7:30, but in the event that something would happen, I don't wanna like limit us.
You guys. Marge is saying no. That's not what was proposed to us.
I would push it to 8, but I don't think 9.
And just so the applicant knows too, it says that the activities generating noise has to cease by 10. Would have to cease by 8, so it's not like the patio has to be cleared off, it's just that's when the band or the music.
Right.
Starts. This is saying that would be.
Grace, Nate, chime in.
I guess 8 seems a little early to me, but there has been some issues with noise, but it's not been this use that have had the issues with the noise. I think 9 o'clock is appropriate.
I think 9 o'clock.
I'm torn because I was part of this proposal and I was the one that pushed for 10, so. I'm happy with that.
Thank you for 10.
Bless you.
We wrote, I get, what I'm wrestling with here is that we have a new ordinance that says 10 o'clock. Why don't we stick with it?
I will say this is one of, I don't know about this particular use, but this is a property where we have had noise complaints.
Understand in the who?
Yes, now at 12:11.
Yeah, I don't know what the noise
Well,
complaints were in regard.
this incestuous relationship with, you know, who's the who brought in the hunt, the wedding this weekend? Was that?
That's time. It's both. I mean, we share the responsibilities with that. But did we get complaints about noise this weekend?
No.
Because
I did
now
not.
that those garage doors are on, you're
all four
outside,
sides.
you can't hardly hear the music.
I did not receive any complaints. This week.
I hear what you're saying, Dave, it's like, we're gonna have one pocket that's gonna be different, that's an unfortunate nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of discussions about this. And I know I fought hard for the 10 o'clock and I think we have to stick with it. Why are they gonna be different? I love the fact that they're not amplified, but we wrote a policy that said 10 o'clock and 75.
The rules are the rules.
Yes.
I would also like to see if there's anything below 10. That number be based on some kind of substantial evidence. I think, you know, if 9 o'clock, we can see that, that's fine, but. If you're gonna go below 10, I think there's gotta be a substantial reason for doing so, other than just, you know, picking a number at the dartboard and just throwing it, so.
I think the number would be what the client offered.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. I think that shows good graces on our part, but just to pick 7 or 8. Just as a random number, I think, isn't really based on any substantial evidence.
But what was presented to us, they presented 8.
Right.
So,
I think that merely represents just our own policies, not necessarily what the conditions we see. Yeah,
Right.
I think that's, yeah, what they say we normally operate as, not necessarily the type of condition we would agree to as part of the permit.
Yes.
Can I just throw something out there? I think they were honest and they said 8. I think if we don't do the 10, I think people coming in here will always say 10. And not be honest about when I'm not saying people are dishonest. I'm just saying they
you
could
can say
always,
that.
they could always say 10, knowing. No matter what I say, if I say 8, you're gonna make it 8. If I say 7, you're gonna make it 7. So, I like being penalized for being honest.
You sold me these 10, is what I'm thinking.
I think it should be consistent. Or enforcing things, and just to be fair.
It's also not amplified.
I don't see this project just gonna be a noise problem.
I have no problem with 10.
Okay, so far, perimeter's road. Nothing occurs outside the delineated area. Music limit at 75 dBA max, 10 o'clock. Parking shall be provided on site and the operation is not eligible for a parking adjustment. I think we all agree with that. Parking shall be calculated at the rate of 1 space per 100 square feet, which coincidentally is what it was calculated at originally, just as wine bar, so that's not an issue. So I think really the only other condition in my mind or thing to look at is whether the music is amplified or not. They did offer that it would be restricted to non-amplified music. And I think just for the record, too, everybody understands that even with acoustic, there's some type of amplification. What we're talking about is not amplified beyond that wine bar area or beyond the property.
Well, and would we not want the condition that, as you stated at the bottom of page 19, going into 20, that the outdoor entertainment facility cannot operate when a special event is occurring in the.
Yes. Mhm. And I have talked to Carl and Liz about that, and that was not an issue. They said they don't use those two at the same time.
But it should.
Is that still correct? Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be it. Janelle, did you catch all of that?
Yeah.
Would you like to read it back?
Okay, that the plan commission recommends that the village board grant the request from Carl Bradley and Tonda Gagliardo to authorize the issuance of a conditional use permit for an outdoor entertainment facility at 1211 Wine Bar, which establishment is located at 10339 Highway 57, subject to the following conditions. The patio area on the previously mentioned property shall be roped off. The patio area is currently bound by posts that contain string lights, and the rope shall be affixed to those posts. Seating shall be limited to the roped off area only. The village's noise regulations must be complied with at all times, and a decibel meter shall be on site and utilized to ensure that that occurs. Any activities generating noise must cease by 10 p.m. Parking shall be on site. Whenever a special event is taking place in the Quonset Hoop building, the outdoor entertainment facility cannot and will not be operated.
And then the not amplified.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can I just say clarification on when you say not amplified? I guess for the last 2.5 years, we have like speakers that the acoustic hooks up to. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. But it's never any, like, it's not rock music, it's not anything crazy, but they do have small speakers that they do use that we have been using that we've received 0 complaints about for the past 2.5 years. So I just want to make sure that that's like we're on the same
Understood.
page there, yeah.
That
I'm not-
everybody understands that.
Is there a way we can quantify that? Because small is not a quantifiable.
You know what?
We can take a
I've
picture.
I've wrestled with this in the past because all music is amplified, believe it or not. So even if you have an acoustic guitar out there, it usually has a microphone, it's got a little speaker or something. But I think it's amplified beyond the property is really the proper way of saying that.
Okay,
So amplified.
How about amplified and beyond the patio?
Well, that's only, music is gonna carry more than that. That's only like.
The property line.
Yeah, but
How
that,
about if you say amplified music that cannot be heard beyond the property line will not be allowed? No, that isn't gonna happen.
Music shall be restricted to acoustic or other soft listening music.
I'm agreeing with that. Agreeable.
Yeah, no bar band.
No, we don't want.
I don't want that. No, you go out and do what you want that, not for us to lay it on the property, I don't wanna hear that.
No, are you okay with that?
I'm concerned about being able to quantify that still, but I think. Yeah, I always go back to Phineas Gage, the guy who changed dramatically overnight because he had a steel rod shot through his head. His personality changed immediately, and you make a deal with one person, you have to assume that. Whoever takes that is going to have, I presume they're gonna have the worst intentions, the next person that comes in there.
This
So
is
that
how,
gives me-
this is how I would quantify it. Give me a second. It's an Android, it's slow.
That's an all information last time.
Music that is slow and makes people feel calm and peaceful. Quiet music emphasizes on the low voice. It may have lyrics or not.
If you're comfortable with.
What about easy listening music?
I would say that everything we have.
That's probably more appropriate is easy
For
listening.
sure, easy listening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so say to easy listening, to the easy listening music styling.
It is a relaxing ambience with peaceful melodies. Okay, there's a definition. Maybe we should have been going.
I can dance cheek to AC/DC, Mark.
Oh.
Actually, there's nothing that's gonna make me happy on this one, so.
Easy listening.
I mean,
Do we care? As long as it doesn't exceed 75 dBA.
no. No,
So take that out then.
no, you can still leave it at it.
I guess what I would say moving forward, if this ever comes up again, let's put a wattage to it. Cause that's gonna indicate how much power goes into it, and it's gonna have a dictation of how much power. goes into it. But if we're way too late in the game for that right now.
Okay, now that we have all that squared away. Anybody care to make a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Schmitz,
Second,
second by Bell. Any further discussion? All those in favor respond with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Agenda item 7A, site plan review. For a new development on Sister Bluff Road and Mariners Point Drive. Julie?
Hey, as you read in the packet, we've seen this before. We had an interpretation on what is front, it's like. And so the Baders have come back to us again. The first floor of the building has not changed. The second floor is a little smaller. But we had concerns about, you know, that long wall and breaking it up. So they have proposed, basically a chase that comes up there with, I believe it's stone on there to break that up. And they just want to make sure this is okay before they go through and do the stormwater drawings and everything else that they have to do. The letter had talked about how they wanted to see more stone on it. Again, this is residential. We typically don't dictate that on residential, but we could, because it does require a development agreement. The letter we received also is concerned that they don't have enough parking spaces there. So for each unit, they do have to have the two, and they do have that in the garage. They do provide a little bit more outside there. Remember this for if, as you read in the staff memo, don't look at the one with the 4 units on it. That's in there just to show you some of the existing topo, just to topography to try and be as comprehensive as possible. The real plan you're looking at, as the memo said, was the one with 3 on it. So, they, like I said, they provided a flyover what this would look like, so people could really grasp what it looked like from the road, from the neighborhood. They provided a lot of drawings, so we could see how that wall would be broken up, what it would look like. And then, of course, you can see the parking that they've provided. We want to talk about it, see if we're okay with it, so they can proceed and come back with their finals, which is the stormwater review and all that other stuff, and a development agreement. Because this is more than 1 unit on a property, it does require development.
So my question, if you look at page 27,
Denise, would it be okay? Can I get a real quick heads up of where we came from March to today? Just following up on what Julie said.
I think you can, but I think we're well aware of that, but sure.
Okay, just very briefly, want to say thank you again for letting us be in front of you. It was March. We wanted to get this right. We actually brought on a new architect to get the elevations looking the way that we hope you guys all like them. And that we are happy with them also. The stone, the hardy board, some of the elements there, the brick that we're proposing, yes, is our attempt to hit not only ironically what the one commenter had asked for, but something we think that'll look very nice. So we believe we've hopefully addressed everything that was brought up in the most recent meetings, and of course are here to answer any questions that you may have. Thanks.
So on page 27, where you have the aerial view, and then the 3 buildings located, and it's all very heavily wooded. And if you look, then let me find the other page number. The renderings starting on 34, or Yeah, 34. Where the fourth building once was is now totally clear. Now, is that just for us to get a visual? Or are all those trees going to be removed? Because now as you're coming down that road, it opens up that whole property. So I think a lot of those trees need to be left. Or I just don't know that they should be clear cut if no building is going to go there. Could there be some cleaning out and keeping the good ones, possibly planting some new? Sure, but I think the building looks great, have no problem.
And our goal, by the way, is, sorry for interrupting, but keep as many trees as we can. That's been our whole reason to try to pocket this as close together in the middle.
And then
So,
the
but
mixture of
that-
trees too, like evergreens, because we don't necessarily want people staring at us either. So a lot of it's, I would say, inexpensive trees that have grown more or less weeds. So I think there'll be just making sure it's the right compilation of trees for not only, growth from the sun or protection from the sun, but also, so looks can't be staring at us eating food.
So you're saying if you remove some of these trees, you're gonna replace some of them?
Yeah, we want it to look right, it's a hard thing to conceptualize in plans.
Part of it in the initial site plan review comments that came back with the desire to make sure that we were putting trees in along with the street perimeters as required by code.
Right.
And we've said, hey, we'll put those wherever you guys would like them, but our goal is to keep as much of the trees surrounding the existing streets that do. So whether those new trees need to go there, so
Okay, so, right, and the street trees are part of the code, but we also don't allow clear cutting in the code unless the structure is going there. So we would see then when you would come back on your landscaping plan,
Mhm.
how where the fourth building was going to be, how you plan on reforesting that,
Mhm.
if there's a whole bunch of
Yeah.
scrub and not
Sure.
worthy things to say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of us, we don't want to clear cut it, because that would just be,
It's just that one picture did not,
yeah. Oh, yeah, there's.
I'll say this is a technical idiot on my part, the limits of certain things, technology and computer wise can be limited.
okay,
In truth, our focus has been trying to dial in the buildings, and make sure those are things that we're proud of, so,
sure. I can't tell if it's 3 or 4 spaces, additional parking spaces you have for guests.
Four was in the original site
Okay.
plan packet. And I believe if
Do
I'm
you
not
feel
mistaken,
that's enough because you don't have really a driveway apron to necessarily park outside of the garage?
that's something that can be debatable. Personally, I think it is, because we're not trying to host major events here, like some others. At the same point, the more parking we add, of course, the more trees we have to tear down.
Right.
It's a fine little balance, so we really want to hit as minimal as possible to save the trees.
mhm. And there's always, you can park in front of the garage too, and there's different ways you can get creative with family.
So that would be my only other concern is that there's enough space for guests. And I guess as you work through the rest of this project and we would see detailed plans, then, we can
Mhm.
have that conversation at that point on what the plan commission feels. Again, last thing we want is people parking on the other road.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I think you've come a long way, relatively easy to work with. God bless you for that.
I just got chills to these, 'cause we have tried to get this to look right. We didn't want to wait 60 days. I'm like, look, it's there yet. And I think we're there. I hope you guys all agree.
So that's how I feel. I don't know about anybody else.
Big improvement.
Yeah, I like it. And I would encourage you too, since this is for you. The last I heard was garages are for cars and trucks and vehicles. Therefore, if you fill them full of junk and you park your cars out in the streets, maybe you did the wrong thing. So you have control over it. I encourage that.
I am a minimalist by nature.
Yes.
I promise you, there is no trunk in my garage.
I can attest to the apartment building I built with him, that's.
Would the commission be okay with, having them come back with their plans for the final site plan review? And also having a development agreement ready at the same meeting, so if we're okay or make minor changes, we can move it forward. So they can move on and get it to the board rather than having yet another meeting on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay,
One thing I want to throw out there that I've asked just about a number of other developments and all that, including the medical center, and they complied, and I made sure to use it when I did go there. Consider non-vehicular transport. You know, there's, put a couple bike racks somewhere, put a couple staples, those are very minimal. I mean, like, you're in an area that, gosh, I sure hope we can get better access to that doesn't require a vehicle. I'm not gonna say that's a requirement, but think about
Well,
it, it's possible.
And we've said to the idea of ultimately whether it's a path or sidewalk, if it, extends farther west along 42 of Sister Bluff Drive or starts heading north, we would love to see that. We joke people are dangerously close to Peach Barn at this point, so if I'm 30 pounds heavier a week from now, a year from now, you know why? But we would totally support that too, so we're on the same page.
they did, if you remember, when they came in with that initial density request, they did offer to put in pathways, additional biking, lighting at the park. I mean, very pro pedestrian park people. So
Sure, I
that
mean,
was
like
good.
sometimes facilities on site can also make a difference, and it can be a pretty small footprint, I understand what you guys are doing, and I applaud you for trying to pave as little as possible.
So do we need a motion, or this is just gonna be on next month's agenda and?
Next month's, pardon, Ron?
No, it's,
Push it in, okay. So next month, we're gonna do our final site plan review. We're gonna look at landscaping, stormwater, lighting, all that good stuff. We're gonna have a development agreement sitting here, so if we're okay with it, we can move that forward to the board.
Right.
So potentially be done in August.
Right, and the only thing that should change on, barring any comments that would have come today on the original site plan we submitted, is simply the update to this building slightly jog the existing footprint lines just a little bit, in fact, a little bit smaller. So all our calcs are almost were exactly what they were, so it's very minor updates. We'll update those other items you talked about too.
Excellent, thank
All right,
you.
guys, thank you.
Thank you.
7B, review draft sidewalk policy.
We have seen this before, and at the last time it came before us, the commission had said, well, we wanna see where all my understanding was, we wanna see where all the word sidewalk was mentioned in the code to see if we need to amend other areas as well. So I have provided that in here. I know you've all read it, so that's just if you have questions.
Let me start on page 38. So. Number 17, sidewalks shall be provided along all sides of the lot that abut a public street. So that means that the gentlemen that were just here, that means that there should be a sidewalk on both sides of their property. I don't think that's appropriate. And then to get into, well, everybody choose on that, especially Julie.
Well, that's what the code says right now, so I'm, you do
Right.
well with it, that wasn't my brain.
No, I know, but since the beginning, since the first time we talked about this, this has been my issue. So under section B, when we talk about R1. And. So I don't know if everybody knows where I live on Maple. And if there was a sidewalk in front of my house, and maybe someday there will be, because it is so dangerous to walk down, and there are a lot of people that walk, more so now with all the STRs in my neighborhood. So if a sidewalk was there, then this says that I need to provide a sidewalk that connects to, or a path that connects to the sidewalk. Well, I have a wide driveway, and part of my driveway goes right up to my front steps. And I wouldn't put in a sidewalk. I have a driveway that you could walk up. I think if there's access to somebody's front door, I don't know that we should be requiring somebody in an R1 district to create a path if there's other access already to their front door, which if they're building a home, there has to be some kind of access from, and they have to have a driveway according to the code. So I'd imagine there's a sidewalk coming from, won't call it a sidewalk, access from their front door to their driveway. But this says we need to do more, and I think that's inappropriate. I believe it's inappropriate for R1 and R3 and countryside. I think it does make sense in R2 and R4. Even though we have R4 in our zoning code, we have nothing currently zoned R4, but I think we're gonna be moving in that direction in the near future. So that's my take on what's here. Am I missing something?
No, I agree with you, Denise. I mean, just imagine Bay Shore Drive. If every one of those properties also had a sidewalk out to the highway, out to Bay Shore Drive. That's what the code currently requires you to do. I think that's not right. I mean, it doesn't make sense. You're adding more impervious surface. Anybody who's coming out that door is coming down the little path to the driveway. Or if you're going to that property, you're probably gonna walk up the driveway, up the path to the door. To also require a sidewalk from the door to the street.
It's overkill.
It's overkill, it's too much impervious surface. And it looks stupid. I'll be honest with you,
Yeah,
it looks
it's gonna look
ridiculous
dumb.
to have paths everywhere. I agree with you. I think those should not be in the code.
Okay.
In my opinion.
So,
The only thing I could think, and I'm hard pressed to think of those circumstances, shared driveways. There's more than, I mean, it would just depend on the layout, but it's possible that could make sense there, but that's even a stretch.
Yeah, because you would go, you'd come off the road, you'd pull in the shared driveway, you'd pull up to the house, you'd get out, you'd go on that little path to the door. You know, usually.
Okay.
I can't think of one where.
I would need to see an example. That's the only time that I could ever see.
And in the building code, forget about it right now, are there any requirements if you have a front door for access?
There is, I have not looked at that in a while, but it used to read, you need a 16 square foot platform or access outside of a door. So,
But there's no code requirements that say you gotta put a path to someplace. So if you can get there, you get there.
yeah, no,
So then
it's,
we shouldn't care if the building code doesn't require it, then we shouldn't require it either. So I'm agreeing with this.
except for R2 and R4.
no,
Okay.
those are different because you would have multi-family. Yes,
Yep. I agree.
an apartment, you'd want them to walk directly up to the sidewalk. Usually.
So, but the other part of what you said is, where should we require sidewalk? You know, for-
Right, that first sentence, which is currently in there, you're not proposing it. I think that sentence needs to go away. We've never abided by it, and if we approve this as that first sentence states, then we need to incorporate it moving forward, which I don't think we want necessarily sidewalks on all sides of the lot, but a public street.
I think we need a lot more sidewalks in this village. I do think that we may not need it. So what comes to mind is, what is the street like? Is that street 35 miles an hour? Should we have a sidewalk? I think so. Is that 25 miles an hour? Maybe if it's 20 miles an hour, no, we don't. It's all about what's that road is, and what, how that traffic's moving on that road, because the greater the speed of the traffic, the greater the conflict. So I don't know that it matters what district as much as what's going on that road.
I think this is something you wanna leave discretionary up to plan commission review, because let's think about it, let's say somebody has a brand new subdivision. Local, quiet area, and you go through and you're putting sidewalks on all the streets so people can walk through that whole neighborhood. You have a corner lot, yeah, you want the sidewalk on both sides, right? Let's say you're on Maple. You want the sidewalks just up and down Maple then, in that area, so it's kind of like not a one size fits all there. I think it has to be based, I mean, we could come up with direct criteria if it's this type road, etc. But I think it should be more left up to, more discretion. Like a viewed all the factors of the case when you're looking at whether a sidewalk should be on that property.
I would agree with that, and I think that going through some of these other requirements, that's one of the other thoughts I have is. I think we should do more discretion in here on some of this stuff. But I'll wait till we get further along. That. I guess in my head, I think about Birchwood. Birchwood doesn't need a sidewalk.
Okay.
Because it's slow, traffic's not moving, I walk on that road all the time, I feel completely safe on that road. Scandia probably could use a sidewalk.
Probably because Scandia is not wide enough though either for the speed and the traffic that's on Scandia.
It's also not designed for this, it could be designed better to limit the speed.
Right.
The whole road is a path.
Right.
People are walking down side by side.
Sunset, you can, once you get past the end of the marina parking, you can get picked off there because there's that like a little S curve there. Other than that, it's pretty walkable.
I almost wonder if a baller would do some good there, cutting that corner, so people, so cars would. Have to,
It's really just that they're, again, we're coming into the time of the season where everybody knows the bypasses. So even South Spring Road right now, you have to be a little careful. Because people have figured out how to get around.
How do we determine actually who gets priority if West Streets get a sidewalk? Because we totally need a sidewalk on South Island too, because we have so many people walking. Especially with the short-term rentals, it's increased a lot.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, now with all the short-term rentals, I told Julie this a couple weeks ago, I'll share this lovely story. Now, people that, are traveling with their pets. Now think it's okay to walk 20 feet into my property with their pets to do their duty inside my yard. They picked it up and carried on and then walked 20 feet into my neighbor's property. Apparently the dog wasn't finished yet, but there is some kind of mentality here that is unbelievable.
I had to put up a sign on my property. Don't pee poo or pee here.
So maybe.
I'm following that too.
Put up a sign.
No, I'm following your side.
So if I look up section 66.1050. In the code, which starts around 129, because I still haven't picked up my new code with all the changes.
There'll be another one.
So, okay, well then I might as well not pick that one up too. So we're talking site plan and architectural review. Well, is this for the administrator? Is this for the plan commission? Because if it's for the plan commission, the site plan and architectural review, we really don't look at residential. So if it was talking then sidewalks shall be provided along all sides of the lot that abut a public street, if it's for the commercial districts, then I think that would be okay. And then we shouldn't get rid of that, or we clarify that it's only for the commercial districts and give ourselves some leeway.
That's a really-
And change that wording, so, but I don't know.
Well, yes and no. So, yes, you're right. It would be for commercial, but it's also for subdivisions. So let's say you had an R1 subdivision, it would apply. I think it needs to say, sidewalk shall be provided to a public street, something about at the discretion of the planning commission or something.
I want a little more teeth than discretion of the plan commission.
How about if I look at
I
what-
think it should say commercial districts and any subdivision.
So when we start doing Wiltsey property, that will possibly be R4. Maybe,
Yeah,
because I mean, I'm envisioning, I saw some developments on the East Coast last fall where they purposely will put in sidewalks and bike paths and all that, and I would want us to probably do that. And then connect that somehow to downtown.
I guess I would look at it, any place that we have more density, I mean. R1, most places you don't need it, when you do, it's not that actually, it's not that area that necessitates it, it's areas that are connecting through there. Which is probably not entirely fair to put that on those people. It's traffic passing. through the
Right.
neighborhood.
Right.
But. I do think R2 and R3 could potentially. Because the density is higher. There's gonna be that many more people,
R2 and R4.
yes, thank you.
we have to be careful because the one thing we don't want to happen is, so this guy meets the code, so he has to put it in. This guy doesn't meet the code, so he doesn't have to. This guy does, and now we've got hopscotch of sidewalk. So we want to make sure whatever we do ensures consistent sidewalk installation.
Well, then we need to add a sentence that references the property abutting.
If the property abutting has sidewalks, then we,
Sidewalk or easement for sidewalk.
yeah. We don't wanna have those. Sidewalks, different work, they're not connected.
How about if I play with that a little bit? How about if I see you, how other communities are handling the corner lots and that, maybe look at some communities that have done a really good job on that and bring that back.
Okay. But we all agree R1. R3 and CS1 get scratched from.
Yeah.
Page 38. Yeah, and then come up with some different wording that. What our intention, the words on the paper follow our intention, as Bob Cochran would say. Okay. Anybody else have anything?
So I'm concerned about us, I mean, I. Being too rigid on the standards to say that we have to have this 3 foot of vegetation separating. I understand that's best practice. That is not done every place. I mean, like, you can go find, I look at sidewalks. One of the many fun things I've picked up over the years. Not every place is that possible, and eventually you might make it so we can't put in a sidewalk to our standards. And I would hate to see that happen. Because most of the time, a suboptimal sidewalk is better than no sidewalk. Occasionally, the suboptimal sidewalk is worse than no sidewalk, but most of the time, and I guess I just want to see that we've got the flexibility that we're not limiting ourselves from getting that access in there because we're too rigid.
Right, because like Fish Creek. They do not have, they plant their marigolds. In that little, few inches of their sidewalk that separates the roadway from the parking stall to the.
So we
And
could-
I think that if you have curb and gutter. It's raised. Depending upon where the location is, you may not require that 3 foot.
There's also other ways other than curb and gutter to get to, if you have a delineated path, like there's. A lot of folks are putting up other barriers not so much for sidewalk, but on other paths. But I guess I'm saying, in an ideal world, do we have that 3 feet of vegetation? Yes. But where it's not possible, we still make it so we can.
So add the language unless a less separation is approved by the plan commission.
And I would also say, whatever we can do to give ourselves, like if we can. A 5-foot sidewalk is ideal or wider, but there are some places where if it keeps us from getting anything. You know, I'd rather be on the 3-foot sidewalk than walking with traffic on Don Maple. But let's still state what we really want.
But
and
give
give ourselves-
ourselves the flexibility to still get a sidewalk.
Mhm.
I mean, right, we wanted wider sidewalks downtown, and some places it simply was not possible. Because of the building setbacks. Any other ideas? Okay. Okay, now we're skipping over the land division code.
We're done with sidewalk.
So do you want me to put in the minutes that the sidewalk should be 5 feet wide or just leave that up top?
Julie's gonna come back
Okay.
with different wording, so you can just leave it out for now, you know.
I know that you have all read every word of that draft.
I have. Need to find the communication.
Ron, you might need a couple activities.
I have a question.
He needs a
So
lot.
I've had on every telecommunication ordinance I've looked at over the last 10 years.
Well, we're looking at the land division. Oh,
No, no,
you're right, I'm sorry.
page 107. Yeah. Go ahead, Nate.
Where are these magical towers that jump up 25% of their height?
That what?
So you have to have the fall width is 125% of the height of the tower. Whenever a tower fails, and it happens, and I see pictures of it. It would have to fail right at the bottom, and then it would have to go up 25% and then fall over. Tower failures are generally gonna happen somewhere, you know, at least halfway up, more likely higher than that. And when they crack, when they go this, they don't fall, they don't jump up and fall over. I didn't have to bring that up. I think that 100% would make sense, but I think that this is a standard that people have, that engineers have gone to in Wisconsin, because I've seen it across multiple.
And it's
jurisdictions.
just silly is what you're
I
saying?
think it's just silly.
Yeah, they either collapse down or they fall over, but I think that's in there because you're looking at, in my mind, other things as well. Maybe some engineer figured when it falls, there's. What do you call it? Vibration and affects maybe out a certain distance. Maybe that's where the wires fall. I don't know. I'm gonna trust the engineers on that one. I don't know.
I get it. I think that I would love if our codes at 100% instead of 100.
I'd be fine with that.
Not that it's gonna make that big a difference, because any tower that's gonna, I don't know that you're gonna see another tower go up here of any substantial size. New towers in this area are gonna be all small and targeted areas,
Small as of what, like what size?
probably 100 feet or less, and probably be monopoles, not like the big thing that's up by one cliff.
What's a monopole?
It is a,
Doesn't look like an Eiffel Tower. It looks like a flagpole.
yeah, it's like a go up like that,
Okay.
or something along those lines. It's like gonna be what's gonna happen in the future.
So. Digging into this. And looking at the zoning code and in all the districts. Like R1, for an example. Antennas over 30 feet tall are conditional uses. We know what kind of teeth we have with conditional uses.
You had to point it out to us.
Yes, we did.
As if
As if we wouldn't know what we're doing.
We also have some federal stuff that overrides us. If you have a ham radio license, you pretty much can't regulate the tower.
Okay.
And ham radio folks are intense, to say the least. Trying to be kind with that.
But my point is that, and Julie liked the idea, I was a little afraid. But she's like, oh, I like it, I like it. I would like, because I think we need to talk about the conditional uses, what zoning districts they're permitted in, what are conditional uses, and if we really still want that to apply, if we are going to be making some changes to telecommunications. And I think that requires a longer conversation than just tonight, especially when we're talking about changing zoning districts. So my idea is that we talk about it as much as what we can tonight, see how far we get. And if we don't get to the land division code, that's okay too. And we'll just start talking about that next month. And we make a motion to have a moratorium on any towers over 100 feet tall for 120 days, which would give us this month and next month to talk about it. The third month, go to public hearing. Fourth month, go to the village board. I just want to make sure that we are covering our bases and we are well informed of what federal rules and regulations are. I don't want us to move too quickly through this without really thinking and then be caught later on.
Do we have someone that wants to put up a tower?
Not that has come to the village, right?
We don't have any applications.
I haven't heard of anything either. You've got all the big carriers up on Lundquist Tower now, you got Sprint, you got AT&T. There's nobody that's gonna expand it here. Right now, if they're gonna put a tower up, it'll be next spring, and that's,
So we're not being pushed into it.
I don't think we'd have to put a moratorium on, but I think that nobody's gonna do it anyway, so it's not gonna cause us any grief to have a moratorium.
Okay.
I would say this, looking back with that short, and I often thought about this, but the horse was out of the gate. On the short-term rental ordinance, I really wish we had a moratorium that we could have slowed it down and done it without such pressure and angst. Instead of allowing another, 40 short-term rentals to come through the door, in my opinion, to let them just come in and just keep coming and coming and coming without trying to find a solution. I don't know anything about the legality of moratoriums with this type of land use. I just know a moratorium really helps make sure that we slow it down and we do the right thing. Because I know in my office, and I was telling Denise, I didn't have time to look this over. Janelle put it in there. There's so much rapid fire. There's not the time to give things the proper review sometimes. And doing the moratorium slows it down where I can look at it, I can do my research, you guys can take your time and review it, and we can do the right thing.
I guess what I would propose is let's put a moratorium on it, let's talk about the land code, because that is what there was some interesting stuff in that land code.
Well, land division.
Yeah, the land division. So, let's put the moratorium on it, let's talk about land division. That's my inclination. Then we don't have to worry about it.
But the moratorium by law is to make sure we're working on it and doing something. We can't just pass a moratorium and, hey, we're not talking about.
We'll talk about it next month. Well, I guess let's have a very brief conversation just so we can, I guess I would encourage everybody to go look in the village and see where there's towers. There are towers in this village. We've only got one that's over 100, two that are over 100 feet. One is ours, 109-foot water. The other one is Lundquist, and that Lundquist tower is an incredibly ugly tower.
Yeah.
And I don't think all towers are ugly. But that one's particularly bad, and then some of these other smaller towers, there's ones all over the place that you probably don't think about it, but it's a 90-footer next to Radio Shack. You probably drive by it all the time, it's there. You've got one on Scandia. Yeah, it's not far from you, Mark, across the street. And it's there, it's not noticeable, so I think that we should probably make sure we're regulating the towers we're concerned about. Towers right now are for people the biggest use for these small towers are people to pick up TV stations. Because you can pick up a lot more TV signal in Northern North County than you ever could before. You can actually get 14, 15 stations. But to actually see what it is, and there's another tower that was put up that you look out at the county building. There's a tower next to the county building.
Yeah, I think we also need to look at, Denise and I were talking a little bit about the fire board and some of the requirements they have coming through for emergency services. To make sure we don't implement something that's hurting what they're required to do as well. Make sure everything's compatible.
So. My first question lies on page 108. When it, line 30. Unless exempted by section 3B below. I can't find a 3B.
This is where it goes back to Denise and it was quick put in there to show you this. We need to format it and to make sure those numbers line up.
Okay.
So I apologize. It was to quick get it in front of you and say, here's the content, of what this is gonna look like, and I have not checked it for consistency or anything like that during sections.
It does bring up something that did almost happen. I mean, like, they came in and wanted to do it, they wanted to put up 100-foot utility pole downtown after we took down all of the utility lines of Berry.
Yep, and I talked to Julie
Yeah.
about that, and those are my notes. There, we should not allow any tower downtown where we spent over $1 million to remove the poles and the wires, only now to have a tower.
I think they're unclear. As you love hearing things, the state has done some things at the level that restrict our ability to control that. I think we should do whatever we can to mitigate that.
Right.
Cause that was an absolute kick in the teeth when they came in and, you know, this company proposed doing, I don't know how many, and that they think they did 2 in Surgery Bay. That's all they actually got done, but they could have pushed it a lot further. So whatever we can do to get ahead of that and make sure it's enforceable too.
Right.
Which
Well-
ones were those names?
The ones that they put up are I'd have to go back and look at the name of the company. They were doing,
Or
they were like some sort of, they were called LTEU. They were cellular, but they were unlicensed. They're a very niche thing. And this company was gonna do it everywhere, and the business model didn't work, fortunately for us.
On page. Well, should we not even go through then what was proposed if you were going to take a deeper dive through it, and we should just talk about then the zoning districts and kind of make a.
I think we should talk about the moratorium if that's the way you want to go. And then come back with something that I've been able to spend a little bit more time on.
Okay, but I think tonight, I think we still should have the zoning district conversation to get that out of the way. I mean, if we're only doing 120 days, or unless you want to do 6 months, and then I guess, you know, if Nate, you're saying that. You know, most likely, we're not gonna have a lot of towers anymore over 100 feet, then is it a moratorium then on any tower over 35 feet, which is our height requirement?
I guess I think that individuals should still be able to put up like a TV style tower. I think that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, other than that, I don't see an issue with limiting it to that.
Okay,
And even then, there's only so many of those towers going up anymore.
right. So then we'll start with, R1, single family. And it, under conditional uses, it says, utility substations, municipal wells, pumping stations, and towers, provided that those structures are a minimum of 50 feet from any side or rear lot line. So in general, when it talks about towers, is it an all-inclusive? I mean, tower, does that just mean what?
it's pretty vague in what it can mean. I mean, it depends on what else is in there in the code. I don't think there's a lot of definition on it. And the reality is like, I understand you didn't intend for it to say like the TV towers, but people very commonly, when it's regulated, you're regulating TV towers in the same way you're regulating larger communication towers. That came up with the county years ago. And it was kind of what the conversation point was, you're treating a 747 like you're treating a Cessna. They're two very different things.
So I did not do this earlier, so I did just look up under definitions, tower, a structure that is intended to support equipment used to receive and or transmit electromagnetic waves. Design examples of towers include self-supporting lattice, guide, and monopole. So is that definition even, does that still hold true for the technology and everything that's out there? That's
Yeah.
still appropriate?
Yeah, the only way I would delineate it, I think there's a difference between, if you think like, what those TV towers are called, Roman towers, they're what, 12 inches base? It's base size that matters. You know, you could have somebody put up a tower next to us, you're probably not gonna see it.
There's also a proposed definition for tower in this draft.
On page 119.
Yeah.
But I don't think that we should allow that except for personal use towers. Why would
That we
not?
should allow what?
We should allow towers in our one. That's not an appropriate use. If we can just not have them there.
Well, when Julie and I were talking, she said, as long as we allow them somewhere, we cannot allow them elsewhere.
Now, that's with land use in general. I have to research, have laws change regarding towers. But in general with zoning, right? So the old strip club example, right? If you allow it in an industrial zone, you don't have to allow it anywhere else. You know, it's allowed somewhere. Same thing with quarries. And that's a little different than for village zoning, but you don't have to make provision for it elsewhere. As long as it's mentioned somewhere, you can deny it everywhere else, and you can say, nope, it's only allowed in that district, that's where you go.
So
So we have to check if if the law still treats towers that's.
So we can go ahead and permit it in an R3, but not in an R1. We'll be okay.
That's what we wanna check and make sure we can still do that.
What about hanging? Well, down in the walk area did this a lot. They were hanging equipment off of water towers. They weren't building a separate tower for the community. They were using the tower itself or the water structure. Do we care about that?
We have that already.
That's how I got here.
Yeah, they're already using it.
I remember that Denise walking in front of you in church, holding some stuff saying, can I put this on the water tower?
Which one?
Don't worry, there's stuff up there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously an eyesore. It's,
Oops.
Very few people look up, or if they glance at it, they see the
Well, it's
water,
not the water tower anyway, right?
and then people don't continue to look at it.
yeah, but
Although some people do think that that is a really great addition. When they come down, you know, the Ephraim Hill or whatever, and they see the water tower, they know that we have safe, clean water. All depends on your perspective. It's not the worst thing.
But Dave, what also has happened in there was a change in 17 that really restricted what you could do in the state of Wisconsin. There was a number of municipalities that were compelling people to locate equipment on their water towers and their infrastructure and charging well above industry rates, which is actually one of the reasons why the telecommunications and the radio broadcast industry pushed so back and lobbied so hard and got their bill passed. Because there were some municipalities down in the Milwaukee area in particular that did compel people to do that because they wanted the revenue.
You have to go on our tower, and oh, by the way, the fee is $100,000.
Okay, so. Okay. So when it says conditional uses, utility substations, municipal wells, pumping stations, and towers. Provided that those structures are a minimum of 50 feet from any side or rear lot line. If we can, we want to strike towers from that section of R1. Correct?
I think so, as long as we put the carve out, and I think the reasonable way to do it is just to say that personal use towers that don't exceed whatever face size.
Personal use is allowed.
Yeah.
And then it shouldn't have to be 50 feet. 50 feet means it's in the middle of your house.
Yeah, I mean, it could be bracketed next to your house.
So then number 7, under conditional uses, antennas over 35 feet tall. So we would also strike that from R1. Okay.
Is everybody in agreement on those personal use towers?
Yes.
Make sure I'm not the only one saying that.
Well, as broadband comes in, I would think that people, like I said, why would you put up a tower when you can't just hook up to the broadband?
Right.
Mhm.
Well, right, and that's the whole thing, Bertram coming in, you know, in the next couple of years. Our residents are gonna be covered quite well.
And all that has to be underground.
Okay, so then we have the exact same thing in R2. So do we feel that it should also be stricken from multifamily?
So we just, one use case where this did come up in multifamily that's down in that cover. They put up a tower or internet next to one of the buildings, but it's also a small person use tower, so as long as you allow that small person use tower,
Okay.
yeah, that should be fine. I guess I think that instead of looking at what districts don't we want it in,
Well, we actually, I know, but this would have to go to public hearing that we're removing this out of the code.
but I guess what I'm saying is the only one I think that we should probably look at is B1 and I1. If we even need to put it, I mean, probably, let's put it in I1 that's almost exclusively us.
It's not, because I was looking at the map, unfortunately, and I don't even know if I like it in I1, but we'll get, that's why we're.
B1, that B1, if we put allow in B1, I think that's enough.
Okay. So then. Large lot residential. Again, the same thing, if we don't want it in R3 either, we would remove that. And definitely not R4.
Pause.
Pause.
I'm sorry. If you, or if we move the administrative building out to the Wiltsey property, will they need some sort of a communication tower? And that's, or can we carve them out of the R4 part?
They're not gonna need a big tower.
Just thinking out
Right.
loud.
We don't have a tower now. I don't think we would.
The only place that's really gonna be. The fire station, I could see. Needing to have a tower.
Does he have,
There's one right over here, 60 feet tall, about 16 inches.
that's in an I, so it's fine. Okay.
Municipal doesn't have a tower.
I don't.
No.
Can't think of one.
The only reason I could see to put one out there is if for public safety, for fire. Public safety, they wanted to put it out there, I think that would make sense, but we can, that's a problem we can figure out.
Okay, so R4, we strike it out of R4 too. Okay. Just thinking out loud.
So then we have countryside. Which is 10-acre parcels. If somebody wanted to,
We want a commercial use in countryside, because that's what this is. I'm saying tower, this is a commercial tower, we want that out there.
and if you look at where countryside is, it's kind of in the
Down low,
down low. And you'll see it from everywhere. So when I looked at the map, then it kind of made no sense that we would allow it there either.
if you allow it there, because the reality is who's gonna go there.
But why allow it, we allow it elsewhere, I mean, like, we allow it in B one, I can see B one,
Do you want it in B1?
you're saying put it in CS one as the op, I mean,
I look at B1 and I'm like, let's just say something happens. That tower goes over. Do I want it in a congested, oh, B1, sorry. Yeah, you know,
Still though,
it's still business and people and commerce and. Man, that's what you see. You come down Little Sister Hill and you see B1 and you see towers, I mean. And at night you see those lights flashing, yeah, we are doing a lot for that Night Sky Initiative and trying to be this, in my mind, this dark little quaint space. I want you to come down that hill and
well, hold on, so,
that's what I see.
so. The only reason there's a light in B
It's
is
when you're
because
building
the village decided to put a light on top of the water tower, they were not compelled to do so, but once they put it there, it was established.
I was
and the
talking about
FAA
West Towers.
Well, the one tower doesn't have any lights on it,
Doesn't FAA require it?
no, it's at 200 feet. So you have to go above 200 feet and then you have to light it. There's no lighting on the one tower, at night it disappears.
Okay.
Thankfully,
All right,
so
so you
now
have
that
there,
it's there on the water tower, you're saying,
we have to jump through it, it's not worth it, we just leave the illumination there.
we can't let the bulb just burn out?
And just lose the maintenance request, I mean, it's.
Don't make it powerful. No, it is, yes, there's other. Because it is a known source, like a known point of navigation,
Okay,
because it's been there long enough.
Okay.
I'm not saying that the lights don't.
no,
look
no,
bad,
no,
I'm
no,
just saying that
I'm just thinking, okay, so you come down the hill, do we wanna see towers? No. So you put them in countryside because it's lower, but the reality is, let's say somebody puts one there, I come down the hill, I see a tower. To the left, I come down the hill to the left towards Pebble Beach, bam, there's a. That's not what we want either. I mean, we wanna provide service and be responsible unit of government. However, we have to make sure it doesn't fall where we have people or traffic.
yeah, I think countryside's bad.
I think nobody had ever put, if you put a tower on top of a hill, all that height of the hill is free. I mean, you can put a 50-foot, if you look out by Algoma, there's a 90-foot tower. Just outside of Algoma, it's on top of a very tall hill, it doesn't need to be that tall. And you've got a couple towers that are about 3 miles away, they're 300 feet. They have roughly the same propagation. So when you put something down in a valley like that, like where countryside is, nobody's gonna want it.
So that's
But-
why we allow it.
If that's what our goal is, it would work out, I mean, like,
No, because I still wouldn't want to see it there because a low spot is, you're going to see it from all directions. And we've talked about our entrances into the village and we have some issues that, you know, need to be addressed on both highways, but I think adding a tower is,
let's still check it, but I want to be too.
I'm not saying something.
You know, Park and Rec, I think Park and Rec is where, Park and Rec in the institution is where it makes the most sense.
Now, if you look at institution, you have, starting on the south end of town, you have the Baptist church property. At the top of the hill, we have, is that NWTC?
Yeah.
Okay, that property is institution. We have going north of town, I don't even know what this is. Scandia. So we have the well number 1 and the marina parking lot. So that could be a place. We have the fire station property here. We have the library. Then we have. Is that all of scanned?
Yes.
All that property. Then we go out down. Oh, plus we probably have. Okay, if
The
this is
childcare center.
scanned,
And then you have the childcare.
but what's
center.
this? St. Luke's Church? Oh, in the cemetery that comes out onto Maple. And then we have the medical center
Childcare center
and the childcare center on the highway. And then on the other south end of 57, we have the county shop, which goes from Fieldcrest to 57. So it, their property faces on two different roads. There's a lot of places there in institutional that I really wouldn't want to see it. It's, if we had in an industrial area, that might be different. But what we have in our institutional is scattered.
Yeah.
So what's the best bad choice?
Well, I also talked about, do we want to have an overlay district? And would we want to pick a spot on the map? And it may encompass a variety of different zoning districts. And where would an overlay be the easiest? And we
So,
can,
so you'd be limiting it just to that overlay district? Can you do that?
We have to find out. I think if it's something we want to talk about, I think we should I got most in my pocket. I should research, and work with Randy. On what we can and can't do. Like I said, I haven't dealt with tower issues in a number of years, so I have to refresh. I have to see what has changed in the law.
I mean, I know that we want to develop the 52 acres out here. But would that be an appropriate place around in the wastewater treatment plant? If we needed a tower?
How tall is the Bailey's Harbor Tree Tower?
That $300,000 tower that AT&T put up through the kindness of their heart is a little less than 100 feet. And I saved the cost on there because that was astronomically expensive for what it is. AT&T really did do that out of the, I don't know,
Those are really expensive.
that was, they're called a monopine, not a monopole, but a monopine. And it, yeah, it's much more expensive, it's about 100 feet. I think the other thing we should think about here is there's a certain level of safety that comes up with the tower infrastructure. I personally wish there was a tower here that was utilized by cellular companies, because someday I think that we'll actually have cell phones working in Fall Fest, and it's gonna take putting a tower here and getting carriers on here. So
We actually talked with Bertram about how to deal with that issue, but I think something else we have to think about is our emergency management committee. And tornado comes through, wipes everything out. Is a tower needed somewhere? Assuming the tinker would out. Or storm or fire or whatever, is a tower needed somewhere to make sure we have communication with the outside world? I don't know, maybe with internet, we don't need it.
yeah, I mean, you probably do want it. I mean, the aforementioned ham radio operators do have an active club up here. And they used to have equipment up on this tower so they could actually transmit. That's one of the things that ham radios do for fun, is
And they don't need cellular or microwave, it's all ham, right?
so. Well, this I think is UHF, but I'm saying these ham operators, they're skipping signals across the atmosphere. Like they're going thousands of miles potentially, depending on what band they're on. I don't know if you've ever noticed there's some towers north of Citrus Bay by Muffin Lane. Those things rotate, but those are all really big elements in their I know the guy who runs it. He uses that to talk to people, as far as I know, he's talked to people in Japan from that tower. And that's not relaying to anything else, that's just because it's really long waves that bounce around the ionosphere. I think that we could mitigate this if we put our own tower up here and we got someone to come here, but that's. I mean, in this particular location, well, people don't want to put up towers, they don't have to. I mean, if you look at these companies, AT&T doesn't build towers themselves, they get somebody else to do it. They contract it out. AT&T didn't put up that monoline.
So, well, okay, this building, this location, the property goes back. Would this be an appropriate overlay district? Along with the sewer and water plant?
I think so. Yeah, I do.
I mean, I would feel okay,
It would fit in more.
it would fit in more.
Yes.
Mhm. And you don't see it right away when you come into town.
Right. I don't know how many people know that there's a 90-foot pole back there
I
now.
don't think they pay attention.
No, I didn't.
Right,
When you come down the hill, you don't even see it's either 90 or 100-foot tower up in zones, because you've got that massive tower next to the water tower that draws your eye to it. If done right, if done not wrong, they blend in.
well, and if we are contracting with Bertram, is this a conversation, if we, I mean, we're already talking about spending $3 million, what's a few, I don't know, another 100,000, nothing. In the big scope of things. Of putting up our own tower. Is that a conversation that we should be having with them? And for
I'm getting
what,
really close to having to go step up in the audience here, Denise, because I do work for Bertram Communications, just didn't disclose that. We've not been talking about spending money with it, but I just want to get that out there. Just so everybody knows that.
So I guess from an education standpoint, Nate. Is a tower something we need here?
My personal opinion has been, my personal opinion, not Bertram's opinion is, I think if we get a tower here and we can get carriers here. We've got a problem for a lot of the time where people's cell phones don't work down below the block. For all that I said that you want to get towers up high, well, sometimes that tower up high shoots right over substrate.
Yeah.
the hollows it misses.
Mhm.
Well, almost every phone call I had today, call failed, call failed, call failed.
Because everyone's back now.
Or the smoke has something to do with it,
It's
no.
not, the
No.
smoke's not gonna,
Okay.
get impact on it. It's the number. So on cellular towers. There's the number of active conversations they can have each base station, and then there's the number of connections they can keep going concurrently. Now, when you have a visitor come up here, your average visitor's probably got about 1.25 cellular devices, because you come in here with a vehicle, your vehicle probably has got a cellular connection. You probably have a work, some of the folks have got work phones, some of them got iPads that are cellular, and then they've got their phones cellular. And you could have somebody, one person driving around having 4 cellular devices, taking 4 seats on that tower.
So we did talk to Bertram when they came to the Parks Committee about, I can't remember the name of it, like during Fall Fest, this thing you could bring in and then you have these little portable pods to increase it. But maybe we need to ask them about, would a tower at this site help with those properties below the bluff? And I know that from working with them in Clayton's, which is where I live, because we have the exact same problem. I'm below a bluff and I have no reception. So they were saying with their broadband project, they run it to where that tower goes. So that when the county does come through and put a tower, or we or whoever, everything's boom ready to go and hook up to it. So I think we need to ask them that question and see what else that takes to make that happen at this site. Which makes the most sense in my opinion. Because and maybe I need to ask Chris, does how does that benefit the fire station? Aside from just better cell service?
And even if the fire station moves in 10 years. In a close vicinity nearby.
If I can share what I know on that, really,
Yeah,
Bertram doesn't really do that, but they could facilitate it. That's not gonna be something that's going to benefit them.
no, but
they've
they
got the
make it happen,
contacts.
they
They
make
can-
it happen. Yeah, they would be in charge of making that happen for us, whether they're having somebody else do it or not, they make it happen. Is what they do,
Yes.
right, correct, yeah, that was my understanding.
Yes, Jim does make things happen.
Yeah, I think they have a lot of subcontractors that do that.
So then basically with that conversation, we have ruled out B1, B2, and B3, and institutional, and park and rec. So we also need then the conversation about creating an overlay district with Randy. That would encompass this area.
Yeah, I need to do more research and get caught up on the laws on it, as far as land use and powers. Land use and telecommunications, unless somebody here knows,
It's nothing,
because I haven't followed that.
really what it comes down to is it's really challenging to say you can't have a tower, but you can make people jump through a whole bunch of things. But I don't know if it was in any zoning district. I think there was, I think we had district from the zoning district, but I do know that change was 2016.17.
So we'll get the law from the law that time. Denise, do you remember what year that information? You had given me some information. Do you remember what year that was from?
You were gonna bring it. It's when Bo was here. So whatever time frame Bo was here, and it might have been at the beginning of Bo, because I remember it was on his list for a really, really long time. And I had wanted the plan commission, I think I had talked about it, the wireless telecommunication, kind of the template, and I thought, and everybody was kind of overwhelmed with it, and I said, if we just take it line by line, there's, whether we understand everything that's in it or not, we're gonna, I think, know where we needed to apply changes, if any, to facilitate how Sister Bay would fit into this. So, but why?
I was just wondering if Nate said there were changes in 2016, 17. I was
Oh.
wondering if what you gave me was after that to make sure it was the newest and
Well,
not,
I don't know where it came from, though.
okay.
I don't know where that document, who wrote that, it probably says on the document.
I didn't notice it on the bottom, but to me, it looked like a standard government template.
Unless it was the county,
It looked like it came out of something like, Wisconsin Counties Association or Wisconsin. Because they use a certain font.
I want to say that Bo brought it back after he went to a WCMA conference.
that's what you recollect?
Yeah,
That would have been after the change, but I think Bo was 18 to 21.
And I'd like to forget.
Well, let me-
What?
We have to learn from the past.
Didn't
We
the
learned.
county, didn't the county just change in the last couple of years, the tower? Because they had to make them higher. And I can see Lena talking about it, and I can't,
They made the change back in 17 because of the state ordinance change.
Okay.
The state statutes. So the state, or the county's ordinance. In my opinion, what the county's ordinance didn't do was address smaller towers. But-
Just
In your opinion, was it good? Except for this, the fact that it didn't address small ones?
Yeah,
So it'd be a good model?
I think it would be a good place to start.
So we have some consensus on here, lots of research to do, and we'll come back next month.
Yes, and what do we want to do about the moratorium? Make the recommendation to proceed with the moratorium?
Is 4 months enough? If you're now talking about. Well, is 4 months enough?
Well, can't we?
Because that only gives us next month.
But can't we
to talk
extend the
about
moratorium if it takes?
Or should we just do it for 6? If you don't think anybody's doing anything anyway,
Do it for six.
I think we do it for 6 and, yeah, 6.
I mean, if we get it done early, okay,
That's-
okay. All right, I think Chanel's writing the motion
Yep.
right now.
You know why I don't, yeah, I've walked through this back property once a week, but I don't see the tower because they're taking this car, they're doing. Draws of life drills on this poor car out there. And it's just. Ugh,
Just be glad you're not inside
I
the
know,
car.
Dave, once you start seeing towers, you'll never unsee them.
This is a problem, and
Okay. I'll vote that the plan commission recommends that the village board impose a 6-month moratorium on the erection of any cellular towers other than those that are utilized for personal use in the village as of the date of the next village board meeting.
I think that should say towers, not
I
cellular.
think it should say telecommunication.
Yes.
Okay, telecommunication towers.
Yes. Wireless telecommunication. Towers,
Wireless towers.
sites and towers.
Okay, sites. And towers, do you still want to say other than those that are utilized for personal use?
Exclude, that are for exclusive personal use.
You want a height limit on that?
Yeah.
No, okay. In the village, as of the date of the next village board meeting, whatever it is. Okay,
Somebody care to make that motion?
I so move.
Motion by Gretzma.
I second.
Second by Shampo. Any further discussion? All those in favor is fine with an eye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Okay, because. Might make all of us happy tonight. That some of our meetings have lasted so long recently
We can go.
Oh, no, very short.
that it's 7:20 right now. And so if we go back to page 42 of the code and we start talking about the land division. We'll talk about it for 30 minutes and however far we get. And then we'll deal with a couple of other things. And then adjourn and be out here by 8.
Let's say we're gonna get out by 7:55, so we actually get 8.
And second.
Okay. So.
Ron, since you've read this twice,
I did.
maybe you can read the comments.
Yeah, can you
That's
sum
the
it up for us?
third
Ron?
time. I still don't know what I read.
Oh, yes, you do. I mean, I think we all know that we're not gonna have to debate the typos and the capitalization and adding administrator and Department of Public Works,
Yeah.
et cetera.
Or anything complying with statutes. There was a lot that was out of compliance.
Okay. So. My first question is on page 48, if somebody has a question before that.
I first one, I have to read you.
Okay. And that is starting, it's something I just didn't understand. Starting on line 77, jurisdiction. Basically, it's not the wording that Julie added in the red, it is after that, as they apply to divisions of tracts of land into less than 5 parcels shall not apply to. My question is why? Why does it matter if it's divided into less than 5 parcels?
Let me think about this.
There's something with the state.
I'm jogging my brain on this. If it's less than 4. If it is less than 5. It's not considered a land, subdivision. Like a CSM is less than 5. And a subdivision is more than 4. Right? Versions apply to all lands within the incorporated.
I think there's a state definition in play here because.
There
I know
is.
The office of Bailey's Harbor, we ended up with 4 lots and with the concept that there would be another lot after so many years went by that we could then. Split that the owner could split that up further, but there was a set amount of time you had to wait. Otherwise, it triggered a number of other things when you had 5 lots versus 4 lots.
Yeah, in the county, it's, if I remember, right, you can do 2 lots in 5 years. Wait, do 2 more, wait, every 5 years, and what it does
The
is
purpose of waiting is
to meet the law. But what it
because the
is,
law is stupid?
yes,
Okay.
because what it
That's
is,
all I need to
what
know.
it is really poor planning, right? Because once you rather, have it all planned out and know exactly instead of 5 and, oh, then 5 years later, oh, I think we're gonna do this, and that's where they do something called ghost planning, which we don't have that here because it's really not an issue, but ghost planning is you come in and you want to do something and take advantage of that goofy rule, you're gonna do it every 5 years. You're gonna lay out ahead of time exactly what all of that's gonna look like, so we can make sure all the roads and everything matches up. So when you do your 2 lots, 2 lots, 2 lots, it all makes sense. Not an issue here, though.
Okay.
We don't have a person big enough that we would even, we would do it in phases, is what we would require them to do instead of ghost plan.
Okay. There's a lot of close planning in Massawabie.
I know that.
Some division that doesn't exist.
The county also does a little, I don't know if you wanna call it ghost planning, but they do hypothetical lots that they all.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, this is all first friends.
So that was on page 48. Anybody have anything on 49?
In the land suitability, why are we giving somebody the option to not include unsuitable land? Wouldn't we want to say, if they bought this whole plot, that instead of saying they may include it, and then of course it has to be a conservative, why don't we say they have to include it?
Development cluster cell subdivision, unsuitable land can be included. You're saying we shall?
Yes.
Yeah, I had the same question. I think it ought to be. You know, the whole thing.
Right, so like the.
Well, I think it would make most sense. I think any developer would include it.
Yeah.
Well, no.
No?
Because we've said it has to be a public park then, and he doesn't want to maintain it, so I think we want to make sure that they indeed do. At least include it in their responsibility.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wait. Long day, what is the date? So if developing a cluster cell subdivision, bad land can be included,
Shall be.
but right now it says can
Yeah.
be included.
Yeah.
Provided the bad land is dedicated to the public or described by deed as a conservancy. And the remaining land is suitable and capable of meeting land division.
That
Oh,
whole thing.
I understand what you're saying. You're saying you either have to make a park or do it like the HOA thing. You don't have an option.
To say I don't want to, right, okay.
Nice catch.
I'm still awake when I was reading. that.
I mean, you want to give It drives me nuts, this still land conservancy areas, the land conservancy will never let them go past. There's places where you could bypass major vehicular travel. By doing that, is there any way we can get ourselves access to there at the same point? Can we say that we can have an easement for a trail easement in that dedicated area? That might be too far, but it doesn't hurt to ask.
Well, we do. We don't say they have to, we say is you're gonna get an extra lot if you let us. Why would he not?
And we do have to be careful because like in the case of the dude we saw last meeting. The unsuitable land, you might not even want to put a path through them.
No, but I want us to have the ability to do that.
Got it.
You know, that property is a really good one to keep in mind when you look at this, because you think about it, if you took all that, I'm gonna say bad land, which I personally think is the best thing, right? I'm a wetland lover. So if you took all the wetlands and the woodlands and that became public conservancy, let's say, why not let him take the homes and tuck them up in a corner out of here, make the lot smaller, tuck them up here, so we can preserve all this stuff we're concerned about.
You know why they won't go for that?
Why? But
Because the people who he wants to, not because that's someone, a developer, they will not be able to get as much money for those homes if those homes can see each other and are clustered. So it's money for that particular kind of developer.
you're right, it could be, conversely, some other developer is gonna say, I'm not running my road as far, I'm not running my utilities as far. I'm getting 3 extra lots, ching ching. I know, it really does depend, I think, on the developer's ethics.
On what their goal is,
Yeah.
who they're
Yeah,
building
yeah.
for.
Yeah, I should say ethics, it's what their goal is.
Right.
The other thing that we should consider about cluster housing, and I know it's not exactly been commission's consideration, but when you cluster houses like that, you make it far more affordable to maintain and to provide services to. And one of the challenges that we've got with post-World War II suburban sprawl is we have a lot of places that are paying taxes, but they're not necessarily paying their fair share. Even these really expensive houses on big lots aren't really paying their fair share because they're so spread out.
Anything else on page 49? We'll go to page 50. I have a couple of questions. Starting on line 14, the inspection of public improvements within subdivision. Why was the village engineer stricken? I understand we have a very capable director of public works. But there were, and this is gonna kind of be reoccurring, so maybe I don't have to bring it up every place it is. For what if we don't have somebody? And then the village engineer is, we don't have a public works person for a time period or whatever, and the village engineer has been removed out of the documents.
I thought about that because I know we're very fortunate right now, but I know we haven't always been in that position. I wanted it to say, it doesn't have to be the village engineer, because that is ka-ching, ka-ching, costing us an arm and a leg. But it does say director of public works or other authorized person. So I guess,
So if we don't have a DPW and you're still the administrator, then you're gonna,
I'm gonna say we need the engineer to come in and do it.
okay. All right,
Is what I would say. And to be honest with you, I would hope, even if I was not here, I would hope that the village would have the common sense to say, Joe, the street sweeper, you're not qualified, we need to call the engineer.
And I think if the DPW is over his
I
head,
know, it's not
and he
bad.
doesn't want to call the engineer, then we probably got to run DPW there.
well, but the other thing too is our DPW, just because you're DPW does not mean that you understand engineering either.
That's right.
Yeah, you may not be qualified.
right? I mean, they may be very good at 98% of the job.
Right.
But not this, and so I always wanna make sure that we have a fallback that. And I know engineers cost money, but you also, depending upon what the project is and what you're talking about and why you're contacting the engineer. Cause you have somebody to point the finger to that's outside of the village.
Exactly.
And
You know, Denise, I would say this. I screwed up, maybe. Throughout the rest of the document, it says village engineer, I think it says director of public works, comma, village engineer, comma, or authorized representative. And I think that should probably be here too,
okay,
to be consistent.
so it should just,
think
every
it should
place it
always-
talks about,
I-
always say those three.
I missed it.
Okay,
So I think we should, I think you bring up a good point though, because we have had, in this village, we have had people very well intended. Go out there and do stuff, and it has made life terrible for us now, where we're fixing things and things that just should never have happened, you know, but. You didn't know better, you do the best you can. And there was also times where we couldn't afford to have the village engineer, you know, it's, to have a village
no,
engineer. up there,
we chose not to afford it. We
Yeah.
always have the choice, I believe.
Cause to have an engineer come up here, you know, that's $1,000 just to have them come here a day. And then there's the work, of course, which is more money. So I think, you know, I always like to give the benefit of the doubt pre-2008 when I hear things were so bad. Do we have the money to do it? I don't know. You're saying we probably just made, those were the choices we made, but regardless, let's make it consistent with the rest of the document. And now I'll double check it again. I had done a search. I thought I caught.
Okay.
The only thing I wonder about putting in there is. And it's consistent with village policy, that way, if the board decides that, you know what, we want this to, that doesn't need to be the engineer. That the code refers to that.
Well, we don't, come again, because we don't have a policy on.
So then it just stands as there, or standing policy, because if this becomes an issue. Let's just say we go back to the. Phineas Gage House. Our entire staff loses them. And we don't like what they're doing. We can then go in there and say, no, we need this to go to the engineer. So let's just change that, without having to change all the code. I don't see the need to put a policy in place. But like, you know, 20 years from now, when Dan and Julie are gone. We don't know who the next person's gonna be, and just to have that safeguard in there.
You might be overthinking that, because it's from the department authorized to make such inspection. We'd probably have some policy saying. I would think the committee would have something.
Okay.
By the way, thank you for thinking that, Danny, and I have 20 years left.
Cause Julie's thinking to herself, hell no.
I also realize you don't go around a lot of places where iron rods are flying at you. That example kind of fell apart.
So on that same page, line 36, and it's elsewhere in here where it talks about occupancy permit has been changed to certificate of compliance. And is that the new standard wording?
So let me talk to you about that. We're also gonna fix that in the zoning code. One of the things, Janelle's heard me complain about this, one of the things that drives me crazy on your development agreements. Are you require an occupancy permit, occupancy permit, occupancy permit? An occupancy permit is given by the building inspector, who we contract for services with, that says this meets health and safety, state health and safety standards. I'm giving you an occupancy permit, you can move in now. Then there's the certificate of compliance, which says you meet zoning, you comply with your development agreement, you comply with chapter 6. There are two totally different things.
Oh my.
And if you've ever noticed in your most recent development agreement, change that, like it'll say, you need you need an occupancy permit, and then there's always a line that says, and you need a certificate of compliance from the village administrator or their designee. Because there is nothing legal, I shouldn't say there's nothing, but when you read your development agreements, the letter, the fine lines in there, there's nothing that says they have to comply with the rest of the code, because there's nothing that says, I shouldn't say that, but there's nothing that says you need you have to have a certificate of compliance that shows you are in compliance. And that drives me crazy. So I've been adding that to your development agreements. That's also in the administrative chapter, which I've amended, which I was gonna bring forward with this one, and I just didn't have time. So maybe you'll see that next one. So you will see, oftentimes you'll see, and again, if I missed it, I did a search, but if I missed it, you'll often see occupancy change, because it doesn't make any sense. It says here, your building inspector who authorizes health and safety is gonna tell you when this is approved for plating or replatting. What does he have to do with that? He doesn't have anything to do with that. It's me. Personally. So.
Oh, your question was on page 52, Nate? Because I think
51 stuff.
start at page 51 and 52. If we're gonna be stopping in 10 minutes, I think that we just wait to have this conversation till
Yes.
next month. This is probably an hour and a half's worth of conversation, just those 2 pages.
Can I at least ask, where did all these percentages come from?
Throwing them at the wall, Dave.
Okay, they're.
So-
Wall watching the discussion.
So I've written cluster subdivision ordinances before. They're all, I've done, this is, I think, the 3rd one, so I've done them all a little different. Sometimes it's a point system, you get X amount of points if you do this. In the Village of Sister Bay, to me, it made more sense to do a percentage. And I thought in my mind, I'm trying to predict what you're gonna like. And I'm saying, what do they value? Like, I think they would give a high value to protecting the natural resources. So I want to encourage that, so I'm gonna give them a higher percentage. I think they're gonna want to see pedestrian access and trails, so I'm gonna give a really high percentage on that to encourage that. That's how that came up in there.
All right, thank you.
I don't wanna discuss it, but I wanna say,
No,
that
that's
caught
fine.
my eye. That I wanna ask Julie, where else can we do things like this? And that's line 4 on 52.
Which one?
Line 4,
For
On which page?
52,
short-term rental with a subdivider voluntarily placing these restrictions. Where else can we do that? Because,
You think that's gonna withhold it?
no, but it's, if it's a tool we can use, where else can we use that sort of thought process? It's not just that particular thing, but there's gotta be other ways we can incentivize.
I can put it in everything I can think of. And we can just, you'll probably get to the board and. Well, I mean, this is a really good way, I'm not me. You're not making that subdivider, you're not making him prohibit short-term rentals. You're saying, if you prohibit them, we're gonna give you this, so that type of thing. And I think we should be thinking that when we look at everything.
I'm just wondering, what else can we legally do? That's where my mind, when I saw that, it kind of jumped off the page, I'm like, how else can we use this? Because maybe if we can incentivize, well. I've got some other thoughts that I'll talk to you about in private that come from there, because I don't know how far I will go, but there's other things that maybe we can do.
I think as long as it is voluntary, I just made a note perpetuity because I forgot the word perpetuity in there, but I think that as long as they volunteer to do it, we're all good. I think if we make them do it, then we have an issue. Right? Because if we say, I'll give you a building permit, but you have to restrict SDRs, that's not gonna fly. But if I say, what's that example? Never mind, let's just stick with this one. But yeah, I think we need to keep that in mind.
Maybe we find a tool that's okay.
Unfortunately, there's not that much land left to do cluster development on. I mean, But I look at it this way, we're gonna have we have Wiltsey, we have all this other stuff, but you're gonna have annexations at some point. And this is a good way to say, because this is a good tool for that, because the other thing is the further you get out, you want to have that slow transgression or transition into a more rural feel. You don't want them packed in there real tight, right? You wanna slowly spread it out and give that country feel as you go out in the country.
But then you want to allow for incremental changes as it develops further out. Over time.
But then think what a beautiful village you have, like, oh my God, they have so much green space. They were so smart. They were thought ahead and they preserved all that landscape.
They say that when we go down to the water. I was down there last Friday with a reporter from NBC, and she looked around, and she's like, wow, this is amazing. But we'll keep saying it, I think is what you meant to say, Julie.
And look at Pebble Beach to say, wow.
I think what we did with Pebble Beach and the waterfront downtown was exceptional. And we had those conversations with the public and people said, it's okay if our taxes go up. We like this. I mean, to have the support that we did. And to preserve green space elsewhere is absolutely commendable if we can do it. But I think the two places that we did it really makes the most impact.
Yeah, definitely.
And anything above and beyond that, I think is just pockets of bonus.
I'm just looking beyond cluster housing, where else can we do this? I mean, yes, there's not that much undeveloped land. But whatever we can do to incentivize people to build houses that are attainable, that are reasonably sized. We should do that, we should be as flexible as we can with those folks that want to put up a 800 square foot house. I think that we should try and find any place in the village they can fit that reasonably in
See,
there.
but don't you think too, that I'm getting kind of way off topic here, that when we go and review the code in its entirety, I have a feeling that we're gonna change some of our zoning districts. And I think they're going to become more dense than what they currently are.
I think we have to. I think we have to do infill. And that's what we're supposed to do.
Incremental development.
You know, on the Wiltsey property, we talked about the small homes and the cluster and stuff like that. And, you know, in my mind, I see this little nests, this little area back here, and it's got 20 little 600 square foot homes, and they're all sharing resources and living together like a little neighborhood and community. And then I see some bigger ones, and I think that this tool, along with allowing different home sizes, it's gonna be, I think, really add to the quality of life and the diversity in the community. We just have to do it right, so we don't end up with blight or something more trash, you know, something we're not gonna want.
I don't think that's in our vocabulary.
No, but you know what I'm thinking, deed restrictions, no storage sheds, no outside storage. I mean, when you think about it, if you have a little home and I'm just gonna throw it out there, you're gonna rent it to a young person. Well, now they got a car, so it's in the garage, but now they got a motorcycle and they picked up a really cool table and, their girlfriend's moving in and she's into gardening, so now I got a wheelbarrow. You have to have deed restrictions to prevent that, because that's not.
Or you have to build a space for that. Maybe it's not attached to the house.
Connected with the past. So you don't have to
You
drive
just
a car.
described a family member of mine. Got it cold.
All right, let's keep moving on.
No, we're not.
What does development incentive mean? That they get a 5% development incentive over the number of lots allowed under the development? On this, on number line 4, short-term rental. So if they restrict it to, restrict short-term rentals in their development, they get a 5% development incentive. What's that?
So, per zoning. Per zoning, your piece of land, right now, if you develop it, you get 3 lots. Maybe the lot size is such that that parcel can only have 7 lots, right? But if you agree to do certain things, you get to increase that density by a certain amount. And every time you do one of these little things, it keeps adding up that eventually you get, maybe you can put 8 lots on there.
Okay.
Because you agreed to do these little incentives. We're incentivizing you to develop smarter, conserve your land, make the lot smaller, make the infrastructure more affordable. But there's trade-offs.
Yeah, thank you.
So. What kind of, Nate was talking about a moratorium on the land division. What,
No,
earlier?
no, I was just saying that the land division was exciting to me. That's what I really was, I mean, like the telecommunications stuff, I've gone over that so many different times over the years. But the land division was that particular portion, actually kind of jumped out at me and thought, okay, well, what else can we do? It occurs to me that it's a really great way to incentivize the development that we want. And the development that I think that we need, because I think we do need more dense development. But we have to do it in such a way that it's not going to, like, back to last year, and I want to bring this up for a future meeting too. For 2 years ago, we were talking about ADUs. And I made a hard push, and I think I convinced everybody that ADUs were a good idea, auxiliary dwelling units. And you said, well, yeah, but what if that ADU is an STR? And I said, that would be bad, because then you could potentially end up with 2 STRs with a far more intense use in a district that shouldn't have that use in any case. And I said, I couldn't even come up with an argument to say, no, we should do that. And I really believe in ADUs as being an important part of the housing solution. Maybe we could use some of this to permit that.
Yeah, you know, Nate, I agree with you. I think it's really wise when you can build on your property for mom so she can stay there, or the children, and they can age in place, right?
And that's what we did do,
Right.
but it didn't turn out
It
that
didn't turn
way.
out that way. Since I've been here in the past year, I've had 3 people contact me. Janelle had somebody today, I don't know what happened with that, but I've had 3 people seriously contact me today. Since I've been here, 3 of them, serious properties where they seriously wanted an ADU. And all 3 of them wanted it for an SDR.
And that's exactly,
And that's the problem.
and that's exactly why I just said, Denise, you're right, we can't do that. And I
Zone it out.
really wanted that. I thought
I
that was a great compelling argument for it, but that's,
I haven't given up. I'll figure out a way.
I got something for a future agenda that I should have done.
Well,
Marge knows what it is.
And I forgot that when, because you probably didn't tell Julie that you should have been on the agenda to talk about your strong towns thing, so now we need to put that for next month's meeting. Unless you wanna,
Did we put that on last month?
I don't know, that's one, but I've been there.
right,
Oh,
I
it
come
was
back from the
before you
month.
went. It's before you, right. Right, before you went. Okay.
so, agenda number 8, so we'll pick up where we left off. Next month on the land division. Review ordinances referred to the village board, we are not sending any ordinances.
Oh, I just want, no, that's on there. I just wanted to give an update that the short-term rental ordinance did pass, but it was revised. So it was.
Extensively.
Yeah, so what they did is, we had talked about grandfathering the license, that was taken out, there's no grandfathering. And it was changed, if I mess this up, it was changed so that, it's not limited to, a certain minimum, so many, in 180 days, it says that new ones are limited to a maximum,
Anybody.
Anybody.
oh, I'm sorry. But after the new license,
Yes. after the meeting.
not people that have a license now. They are limited, I better double check that. They're limited to renting it 2 times a week. And then they're limited to 4 bedrooms. And they're limited to 4 parking spaces unless the property doesn't allow as much. So they did make some changes.
And they're also, there's a multiplier for how many bedrooms. You are allowed 3 people per bedroom. So if you have a 4-bedroom home, 12 is your capacity. Children,
Cozy, isn't it?
what?
Cozy with 3 people
Yeah.
in the bed.
And
Didn't
if
say
anybody
here.
wants, if anybody wants more than 4 parking spaces, or they have more than 4 bedrooms, they have to come see us.
And
Isn't that gonna be fun for you?
it's coming, we get to talk about it again in January.
Right. And we've already put it on for 6 months from now in January, to see how.
I think I'm gonna be out of town.
So
Wanna go to Arizona?
This-
Wanna drive? You drive?
probably won't, not gonna slow it down by much, is it?
No.
Oh, no, the biggest component, which also will not take in effect for a year, unfortunately, is that the fee was raised by $1,000 to $1,500. And that,
500 to 1,500.
Yeah, I thought it was increased by $1,000.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
and there's 2 things gonna happen with that additional $1,000. One is, we are gonna have software made so that all applications are done online, and if you miss a step, you can't send it in. So no more staff going through all this stuff, and there's tons of things missing. And part of that $1,000 will also go to someone who will enforce the STR ordinances instead of Julie. Somebody that we will hire, that is yet to be determined what kind of person this would be. But basically, somebody who will enforce not just STR rules and regulations, but any other ordinances in the village also.
Ron's coming out of retirement.
And if we don't spend that money, we're on that, we're probably gonna have to give it back. Because that's how the statute reads.
Yeah, it has covered your expenses. I'll tell you what, though, we can easily explain how that money went, because if you look at my salary, when you calculate someone's time, you have to include their wages and benefits. So you're looking at a pretty high per hour rate. No, there is people I've spent hundreds of hours on that far exceeded that $500 application. So it's really easy to prove that those fees are not even sufficient. I mean, I think we're doing good now. We'll cover, because with the new software, you're gonna reduce the amount of staff time that's required. But I'm already getting good things. I'm very.
For very wealthy people, of course. That's why they're wealthy.
We don't have anything on here to refer to a future meeting.
So the future next meeting, just so you know, we don't have anything to refer to, but just, so you know, we're gonna be starting, and I told you this last time, but the board approved the comprehensive land use planning contract. So now we can officially start our land use planning meetings.
I have something that I want, I wish I would have gotten in touch with you and these. Well, this last weekend, but something I would like the planning commission to consider. I've had a couple conversations with Joel Kitchen, looking at this ADU issue. Understanding that we're not going to get the state assembly to change that lovely budget rider they put in there. But to aim smaller, say, well, is this possible? And Joel isn't entirely here and say, well, that's impossible. He said it's a challenge, but if we would consider asking Bill Kitchen, to have the plan commission to carve out the ADUs from that, what I perceive as a right to rent for STRs. So that we could permit ADUs and not have them have that right to be an STR. It's not gonna be a silver bullet, but 18% of new dwelling units in the state of California, I mean, I don't think that we wanna be the state of California, but just because of the California doesn't mean they don't do some things right. 18% of them are ADUs.
I read a really interesting article
Mhm.
Yeah.
where they're building extremely small ADUs to house the homeless.
Right,
Interesting, it was a really fascinating article. I mean, the homeowner has to, and I don't think that there's much that the homeowner is getting out of it. Incentivizing it, but it was just a really fabulous idea,
Like I said,
I thought.
What about if ADUs become optional? Anyone wanting a permit for an ADU voluntarily signs a deed restriction saying it will not be used, rented less than 30 days. And that's the requirement that it's voluntary.
But if they sell the property, the new property owner can take off the deed restriction.
So not if we say it's into perpetuity. And and that goes with the assigns, heirs and whatever.
so however we can make that possible, I was just going with a path that I saw and I happened to be. I reached out to Joel and I thought, well, maybe this is the way to do it. If there's another way to do it, great. It doesn't matter the path we get to, but I think that's an important tool for housing that the village could benefit from. And like you say, if it's a long-term rental, even if this isn't a family member, if it's somebody that's renting the unit, that's a lot different than a short-term rental.
Yeah, so what if if from the farmland preservation days, and well, it's still out there. A farmer can't sell off land, right? You can't sell off land so you can come and build a McMansion. But a farmer can sell off land for his child or parent or worker of the farm. What about if it's that same thing where the ADU is allowed if it's for the parent or child of the landowner? And they voluntarily sign a deed restriction into perpetuity, because you'd have them sign the deed restriction anyway, right?
I think that what we should do is have you research this, figure out what you think the best way to do it is, and if you don't think we can do it, then let's discuss writing a letter to Joel as a plan commissioner.
I think we need to bring Joel here and tell him how horrible that this has made our lives in our community.
I agree. You should be.
I mean, he
Let's invite
stands beside when shortly after, it was during COVID. Rob contacted Kitchens. We had a Zoom meeting. It was only for I think anybody could Zoom in, but it was only for board discussion. We talked about different things. I brought up a lot of hot topic buttons. One of them was STR and how horrible this has been for our community. And, he's just washing his hands of it and just takes no ownership on what he has done. And that's unacceptable to me as our elected official.
When I saw him at a meeting, maybe about 2 months ago, it was a DDC meeting, Destination North County meeting. And I said, my planning commission chair and I would like to get together with you and talk about SCRs. And he goes, when to everybody? And he rolled his eyes. I was like, oh.
I guess we could try and get him to, I don't know what good it's gonna do to get him here. I think if we could convince him we have a chance of getting him to take this to his.
Because I've got a lot of stuff that I actually have saved on my desktop from a different place I work. One of them was just real quick, they had, what would happen is you could have a second home for a medical hardship. So if mom was older or dad had cancer, you could put a second home on the property. And what happened is we had a lot of pressure to not have it for mom or dad. And what ended up happening, they didn't become SDRs, they became marijuana worker housing. So then the rule was changed, I changed it to say, and it's something to think about, because it discourages SDRs. It had to be within so many feet of the main entrance to the home. These were private septic, it had to share the private septic, it had, you make it. So it's very clear it's for grandma, not comfortable for a renter.
Well, you'd have to have a good renter then. You wouldn't, the person who's living on site or living there is going to be very aware of what that person is doing. If they're a bad actor, they're going to be aware of it.
Yeah, but honestly, why not say it's for the parent or child of the property owner?
I think that we need to make it more open than that, because we need to,
Why don't we start tight?
let's see where we can go. Let's see what options we have. I mean, if we can put this STR, I think that we're getting to the point where that's a debate for the plan commission. But let's just let's see what options we've got, because if there's other options, let's go with the path of least resistance on this. If we can get the same thing accomplished, let's not spend any more energy on it. We have a lot of other things we need to spend energy on.
Okay. Back to Mr. Kitchens, okay? We all have made decisions on this commission that we have backed up. With debate, with research, we stand by those decisions. If we voted yes, if we voted no, we stand by those decisions because we have done our homework, and some things continue to come up and we still talk about those positions that we took. For Joel to roll his eyes, you and everybody else want to talk about him. He needs to be held accountable. And I'm not necessarily saying in a condescending way, but you voted for this. This is what we're dealing with. This is what we want to share with you. This is what we want to do for workforce housing in our community. This is what is hindering us. You who created this need to help us get out of it. And these are some thoughts, and what can you push?
And actually, if every community in the door is having the same problem. So that's a big chunk of his area. It'd be nice if we got everyone together.
Or a representative from each of the villages. Because the more people you have, the greater chance he has to use politics. I mean, the political spiel that they all have.
Right.
But if all the villages are facing this problem, so a representative, one or two from each community, gets together with them and says, this is what has happened as a result of this legislation.
I think the challenge there, and this is gonna sound like it's in defense of Joel, but it's a reality. Joel said, it's not about convincing me to do this.
Oh, yeah.
It's about me convincing the other assembly members, the other people he caucuses with. And he said that there's a very real pride of authorship by this gentleman who did put that rider on there, who's going to be resistant to putting back. So I don't think it's so much about convincing Joel as it is to get the rest of the assembly, which I also wonder about the Wisconsin Towns Association, if they can give us some guidance and see who we need to go and hit this to. Maybe it's not just Joel Kitchens we need to go to. Maybe it's this, I don't know where it is, but it's in southwest Wisconsin.
But don't you think that if we are sharing our particular plight, not saying that our particular plight isn't the exact plight of somebody else or 90% of it or whatever, but don't you think that if we can convey all of that to him, that we might come up with a solution that he can put forward and push for his constituents? I'm well aware of politicians who will push what they want and just give something else lip service.
I say we craft legislation to allow areas that have Pratt areas to dictate whether or not they allow short-term rentals and to what degree. And then we bring it to him and ask him if he'll sponsor it.
Because that's only a handful of places.
I also think that we should, let's use the towns association to figure out who it is, who else we need to convince. And if we have support elsewhere. Just as recon.
I think legal, I think the league.
Or
does-
whoever.
Yeah, because the towns,
I mean, I guess what I was referring to is, I talked to Dave Leno about this, and he said, well, the counties association was instrumental on getting some of the stuff through. And they figured out that it wasn't necessarily their representative they had to talk to. It was the representative who was holding it back. So that's what I'm saying, if we have somebody that's got the awareness down in Madison,
yeah,
figure out, it may not just be going to Joel. It might be going to the other folks who are gonna, and helping them understand it. And should Joel do that? Yes, he should do that for us. At the same point, I wanna get it done however we can.
I love the Pratt idea because it's a narrower scope.
And that's what, that's where I started thinking about this ADU is instead of. I looked at it as, okay, we want to move this mountain, well, maybe if we just wanna move this boulder, we can get that done.
I wrote some legislation time that became law. And what I did was, my strategy was, I wrote it, I presented it to the sponsor, which was a county board member, I was in county government at the time. And it made them look so smart and so talented, and they ran with it and it passed. And I think you have to do the same thing, you have to come up with this wonderful solution and let Joel just run with it, and oh my God, he's the best. But you have to present it to him, because he doesn't, I'm not being disparaging, but
I don't,
usually they don't know how, or they don't know our issue deep enough. So we write it, we give it to him, ask him to sponsor it, and hopefully he runs with it. If not, we move on to the next guy.
It's known as playing politics.
It is.
But hey, it's a reality.
Yeah.
You deal with reality.
Anybody know any lobbyists? No. Okay, not for us, I'm just saying. It's a lobbyist.
I noticed on the website that you put out a proposal for, or a request for proposals to look at the old village hall and make it into a meeting space.
Community center.
Is that decided?
That group, did a survey,
Which was poorly crafted.
and we're not gonna go there.
Okay.
And they did a survey, and those were the results, which interestingly was different what they originally wanted, so I'm glad they did a survey. And it revealed a kind of like a non-athletic or non-active community center. So now they are doing the RFP for the architect to design what that would look like, how to change the building. That's where that one's at.
okay, are we all done? Make a motion to adjourn at 8:09. Motion by Berto,
Second.
second by Grosvenor. All those in favor, respond with an eye.
Aye.
Aye.
First time since I've been here.
I put on.
For this time.
It